Alexander, how are you?
Habibi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good too. Dallas, how are you?
Great, Yaman. How are you?
I'm good. Let's get to it. Alexander, what did you think of Figure AI's unveil?
It was pretty nice. I mean, there were a lot of news. It seems to be great. They have come a long way.
So what caught your attention in the presentation?
Well, they boosted the AI inference, and also they seem to have a lot of units now, and the design seems really clean. So yeah, that's nice, I think.
Okay, clean design, the inference computer, and you said a lot of units. How many did you see? Or did they say how many?
No, but it was like quite a few units in the background, and yeah, so it seems they become a long way now compared to Optimus. I don't know, maybe that will become true soon, that they will deliver 1,000 units to BMW. Who knows?
Is that the plan that they announced? 1,000 units to BMW?
No, I don't think so. I didn't hear anything about that.
Well, they did say that they are already on the production line, but they didn't go into detail about it. And I'm really curious about this. So you mentioned in a reply that you believe it is ahead of Optimus. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, they say it's 100% autonomous now. So I guess it's not TLA operated. And I mean, they have an LLM running on the unit, and as far as I know, Optimus does not. So in that regard, they are ahead.
Omar, welcome. How are you?
Hey, doing good.
What do you think of Alexander's comments that Figure AI is ahead of Optimus because it's running an LLM and it is 100% autonomous?
Well, I mean, anyone can run an LLM. Go download Llama 3 and run it. It's not exactly rocket science, and I don't think I would call them ahead. I mean, Tesla is using a language model that they actually have a hand in developing. They can purpose design it via the billions of dollars in XAI for exactly what the robot needs. So I would say Tesla's probably ahead, but really anyone can download an LLM. Really, I wasn't too impressed with Figure's announcement. Looks like a nice video, but really, when you look at the claim that it's the most advanced robot, and then they're talking about the hand with, 16 degrees of freedom. Well, we've already heard that the new Optimus hands have 22 degrees of freedom. So it doesn't sound like it's actually the most advanced. Obviously it's not fully autonomous. That's complete nonsense. What's the percentage of success when it tries to execute a task autonomously? It's obviously not 100%. So what is it and where does it need to be to actually go in production in the factory? What they showed seemed pretty slow. The walking seemed to be not as advanced as Optimus. And it certainly doesn't seem ready to actually go into the factory, despite them sort of showing that in the video. So, still seems to me like they're one of many robotics companies, a company with a better marketing team than necessarily a better competitive position in the software.
Dallas.
So I'm going to kind of equate this back to the Tesla side, kind of like how FSD long term is going to be licensed out to other auto manufacturers. Personally, I actually love the design of the announcement today. I think there's a lot of people out there from a hardware perspective that would choose this design over Optimus in its current state. So, if they decide to go the licensing route with the Optimus as well, then that's cool that there's going to be kind of other cool hardware designers out there in the robotic space.
Luce.
So regarding the figure AI robot, in the example they showed of it working in the factory, they said that it learns and can recover its failures, and to do so, basically he hit the piece in place. So basically, he tried to fit the piece in a position. It failed, and then to recover, basically it hit. It softly hit the piece back in the place. This is 100% teleoperated, okay? And they are lying. And not only it's teleoperated, but the fact they are not even able to lie well enough to make you think it's not, it's pretty disappointing, I would say. I never saw a robot hitting a piece into place.
Okay. Luce, first of all, your audio quality is a little low today. You're coming really from far away. Alexander, what do you think of Luce's comment as well as Omar's comment that figure 02 is moving too slow and it's not walking as well as Optimus?
Well, for Luce's claim, do you have any evidence for that, really? And for Omar's comment, well, does Grok, can you voice prompt Grok yet? Is that even a thing? So I don't know.
I mean, you have models like OpenAI Whisper that are completely open models, and they can take speech and turn it into text. The new Grok is an Omni model, so it can take in not only text, but images, video, audio. So, it's basically trivial to do voice recognition today. Even doing voice recognition locally on device with OpenAI Whisper is trivial, and the quality would be very high. And these more recent models like GPT-4o and Grok 2 and Grok 3 can just take in audio directly without even having to convert it into text.
Well, are those released yet?
Yeah, absolutely. OpenAI Whisper is a very old model. GPT-4o has been released. Grok 2 is just finished training. So, it's not exactly state of the art anymore. We had Amazon Alexas like 10 years ago. They couldn't actually think or reason very well, but they could definitely take your speech and turn it into text pretty accurately. So, that isn't really new. Everybody has that, obviously. Um, so I'm not really seeing Figure having a competitive advantage there over, say, Boston Dynamics, Tesla, Chinese companies, etc.
Well, obviously, Tesla is not going to use any other LLM than Grok, right? So what others have is irrelevant in this regard, isn't it?
Well, I mean, Tesla can use any language model in their device, whatever the best language model is. We're lucky to have really great language models released for free, like Llama 3 from Meta, Mistral, and other models. And of course, XAI is also training the Grok model. I would assume that they would use Grok. Grok is training on 100,000 GPU cluster. And I think that level of vertical integration is very powerful, right? With OpenAI training on Microsoft's Azure cluster, they don't own the cluster directly, right? So really the core competency in training the best model is actually how fast you build out your cluster. But they're leaving it to a different company, right? So I think Musk said, okay, this is kind of a classic vertical integration where I could maybe have a better product just integrating this core competency into the business. And their Grok 1.5, Elon has called it sort of a baby Grok. They were sort of just getting something out as fast as they could. Their next models, they want them to be state of the art models, and they've got some very smart people working for them. So I think the ability to really train a model, right? These are multi-billion-dollar models to train. Each training run costs millions of dollars, and you're doing lots and lots of training runs. So the ability to have something that you're actually developing in-house, that you're investing billions of dollars in, that you can purpose build for the robot, that you can design to fit within the resource profile of the robot to execute really well on the AI 5 chip, that seems to me like a competitive advantage compared to, Figure clearly doesn't have their own LLM. So my guess is they're probably using Llama 3.
Luce.
So to answer to Alexander, have you ever seen a humanoid robot recovering from a failure by not recalculating how to grab the piece and basically calculating how to place it again, basically how Optimus does it with the batteries? The figure robot basically gave a heated the piece back in place like a human, like that's 100% teleoperated.
Okay, so let's just imagine if Optimus did the same thing. Would you be as prone to saying that about Optimus?
So to really do an action like that, you don't only need to calculate like the piece and basically how to place it in place. You will need to calculate all the physics about how the piece would react to all the environment and the forces involved. If Optimus did that, I would 100% say it's teleoperated as well.
Okay. Actually, correction like that has been existing in automation for like 15 years. There have been tries. It haven't been like 100% successful, but I've seen it done with automation robots before, actually.
So just to understand, can you give me an example?
Yeah, sure. So I worked for a company before that bought an automation solution from a company in Stockholm, and it took a part out of a pallet, and everything was just scrambled. And it just took the part, it put it on a table that rotated, and it tried to pick the part up. If it failed, it changed its angle with the gripping arm and tried to grab it from another angle. And that calculation was made on board the computer for the robot.
Yeah, I mean, a robot can definitely see that something's wrong with computer vision and fix the mistake. That is, you know, it's not trivial, but it can be done. It's been demonstrated. I believe Optimus has also demonstrated doing things like that. So, I mean, I, it's definitely true that you can do these things with deep learning, but I mean, look, this is the reality for the company. This is a startup. They've raised some cash. I forgot how much they've raised, but they need to get the company to a point where they're making money before they run out of money and need to raise more. So, can you make robots? Can you produce them? Does the hardware work? Can you make enough of them? Is the software good enough that they can actually provide economic value compared to hiring human? They need to do the same things every other robot company needs to do. They need to get a product out and start generating some revenue, or else they're going to be one of many robot companies competing in a very competitive market in a space where it's safe to assume it may take billions to train the models needed and build the compute clusters needed to make this robot have a brain, right? That's really what we're talking about here. Robot hardware, nothing new. We've had Honda Asimo, we've had Boston Dynamics Atlas. We know how to build a robot. This is all about the brain. And it looks like a good humanoid robot, another sort of Me Too humanoid. But what is their sort of durable competitive advantage that's going to allow this company to survive as a company and not eventually run out of money? So, I think it's a good presentation, good for the figure team. I applaud them, but let's see this actually get out into the real world and be a real product.
Alexander, do you agree with those comments?
Well, because they already delivered at least one unit to BMW, so it's out in the real world. And I don't think production of the unit will be that hard because it's not like producing a car. It's much smaller machines needed to produce at least the body. Wouldn't be that expensive. I mean, if you use die-casted aluminum parts, you die-cast an aluminum part in like 10 seconds. CNC machine it in about a minute. So it's not that hard. I can't speak for the battery pack, obviously, because that's not my cup of tea. I can't speak for the chips, but for the body,
Well,
it would be easy.
what caught me by surprise is that you claimed that they are ahead of Optimus, and I haven't yet seen a point that's supported by facts. Can you convince anyone on the board that in any way this robot is ahead of Optimus?
Well, Tesla haven't shown us that they can speak to the robot and tell it to do stuff. Figure did that in the demo they showed us like a half a year ago or something, 4 months ago. So I mean, already that demo is more impressive than what we have seen
But
Optimus
then
do.
when you look at this Figaro 2 robot, they didn't mention the OpenAI integration at all. They're now talking about an LLM running locally on the device. So, this sort of superficial demo they gave, I think they realized it's not really workable for the main LLM on the product. And that's kind of the thing about this company, right? They'll demo a lot of stuff, but eventually they said, wait, we probably need the language model running on the device rather than calling out to the cloud. And OpenAI is not going to give us the weights of GPT-4 to run on a robot.
Alexander?
Yeah, well, do you really need to run it locally? Like if you have 5G and stuff, it shouldn't be a
I
problem
think
to.
you do. I mean, you know, your robot goes into a dead zone of your house where there's no Wi-Fi, suddenly it loses the ability to speak and move. It's just standing there. You're like, "Hey, robot, what are you doing?" It's like, I can't speak. There's no Wi-Fi." It needs at least something on the device. Maybe more complex queries can be escalated to the cloud when there is signal, but you need a basic model on device to fall back on, I think.
Just like any teenager today done.
Wait, so you said they already delivered one of these Figaro 2s to BMW? Are they actually using it, or is it just like I didn't hear about this?
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
I don't
say
know.
that's one thing that I kind of took away from the presentation is that, and even before the presentation, though, people were telling me Figure is already delivered to BMW and that it is doing some tasks. So remember from our yesterday's conversation, we said that would be a major milestone. However, there are no details on how many and what it is exactly doing. So it might just be a talking point.
I mean, you know, we've already got Optimus putting battery cells in trays, but is that necessarily economically valuable compared to a human? Can it do it as well as a human? What's the cost of that Optimus compared to the human? These are all things that matter to determine whether this is really a product that has a market or not. So, if I heard that i- BMW really was using these in the production line, they're actually letting go of humans and they're using these robots now, and, let's say they've got 10 of them, 100 of them, then that would be, very impressive, as I said yesterday. But it seems to me like they're kind of trying to claim victory here a little bit by saying, we delivered one to BMW. When the reality is, I bet the thing is pretty far from being able to be as good as a human in any meaningful step of the production process.
But that is also true for Optimus. But I actually think this is good for Optimus because this will kind of push Tesla to show us more demos, just to show us that Optimus is not worse. Don't you think?
I mean, I don't think Tesla necessarily has to prove anything. If you just look at the Optimus Gen 2 and you look at this thing, they've just, obviously taken heavy inspiration from the Optimus. There's no doubt about that. So I don't think you necessarily need to be giving your competitors updates that often. I do always love the videos. I think there's been significant progress since the last video, but they don't really need to prove anything or win the meme wars. They just need to actually win in the market and be the dominant humanoid robot. So that's what's really important. And I think they're probably going to get a product to market faster. I think that using it internally in their own car factory, they have a lot more opportunity to do what's best for Optimus than working with an external company like BMW. And it seems like Optimus is still the most advanced humanoid, but at this point, they're still both products in the lab. The question is really who can get this out into the marketplace in meaningful numbers first.
Thank you very much. That was a really good discussion, guys. I appreciate that. And we have Sierra on the board now. I would like to get her thoughts on Figure AI's new robot as well. She's very experienced and very thoughtful, researches these things in depth and thinks about these things and has a good way of communicating them to us as well. So happy to have her on the speaker board. Before that, this episode is sponsored by Joa Life. If you use the code TSLA Live, you get 5% off your purchase, and we get 5%, which goes toward improving this space. Sierra, welcome. Can you guys hear Sierra? Okay, we have a connection issue. I'm going to move you down and bring you back up. Before we do that, about Tesla, would you like to give us an update on 12.1, 12.5.1.1?
Sure. So first of all, okay, just sorry for the connections. So there are a couple of updates. So first of all, 12.5.1.1, there was another wave early this morning. So it's still rolling out. It's not a big wave, but we're getting to close to 9% of the US and Canada fleet with that version. It's still hardware 4 only and no Cybertruck yet, so that probably will have to wait until further releases. But this one is still going, and so that's one thing. And the other thing is actually there is news that there is a new version coming out, version 12.5.1.2, which is supposedly already released internally, and it's should be coming soon to customers, maybe hopefully this week. The big news about this version, I don't know if it's very different from .1.1, from the FSD standpoint. But the big news is that it will be on the .26 branch. So it will include all the new features of the summer release, which is good news for everyone. So there will be a merge version, branch merge, hopefully this week, that will catch up on both user interface features and also on the FSD. So that's something to really look forward to.
Okay, great. We're jumping around a little bit, but I want to get Sierra's thoughts first. About Tesla, please stay on the board. Sierra, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect. What'd you
Cool.
think of
Sorry
the
about that.
Figure AI presentation?
I was incredibly impressed. So they've added a lot of features since the first demo. It seems like they've actually entirely rebuilt the body design of the bot, but they have added more cameras. So the former model had 2. It now has 6 onboard RGB cameras. The hands have been entirely redesigned and now have 16 degrees of freedom and human equivalent strength. They have added an onboard VLM, so visual reasoning from the cameras, so the bot can actually see and understand in real time the world around it. The battery is 50% more capable, and the inference is now 3 times the computation than the previous model. So I'm really impressed with how much advancement we're seeing from Figure 1 to Figure 2 in only about, I think Figure 1 came out 7 months ago. So that's a pretty impressive jump in capabilities. And it's walking really well. They've added some new actuators to the knee joints and it's moving around really nicely. But the equivalent of human strength in the hands, I'm super impressed by.
Thank you for that summary. So Alexander claimed that Figure AI is ahead of Optimus. Do you agree with that statement?
So what they didn't show in today's demo, and I am curious to learn more about, and I hope that they post more, but I'll also try and dig into some of their technical papers if they've released any. I'm curious to know how the speech recognition works and the voice interaction. It's saying that it's speech to speech capable of conversation through onboard mics, but that could mean, and most likely does mean, that it is hearing speech, generating that into text, sending the text as a query to the onboard LLM, and then doing the same thing on the reverse output. I don't think that, Optimus doesn't speak yet. However, knowing what we know about Tesla, I think that Optimus is actually going to process audio. So for me, that will be a big differentiator in which one is more advanced. Also, the real world understanding. So the demos that we've seen were kind of limited, but it does seem to be using its visual recognition to navigate. The first demo that we saw, they were voice prompting Figure 1 and asking it to do stuff. But if it does truly have real world understanding and is able to make its own decisions based on what it's seeing and processing, then I would say that they are on par with one another. The speech does
Okay.
make it pull ahead a little.
Okay. Omar, can you speak to that speech part? What's the difference really between going from speech to text, processing that, then text to speech versus processing audio?
Well, there's more latency involved in the first approach, right? So first you have to execute a model to take the audio and turn it into text, and you have to take the text and pass it into the model. Then you got to take the text that comes out of the model and pass it to another model. Meanwhile, you're swapping these models in and out of memory. A more advanced model like GPT 4.0 can just take an audio waveform as input and directly output an audio waveform, and they can actually add tone into the audio output and give it more character. You can say, hey, sing like this, do things like this. But this new approach, the sort of omni models, they do require more inference compute than just a text-based LLM. So if I had to guess, I'd say it was probably doing speech recognition, turning it into text and reading it out. You could do that all pretty quick and make it seem like one step, but you know, I'd be pretty impressed if it was really running a omni model on device. That would be pretty state of the art, and we haven't seen anything like that yet.
Okay. And then can you also speak to VLM on board? What does that mean exactly?
Well, it's just an LLM, really. So a lot of times what they'll do is they'll just like take an image and convert it into base 64, or like take certain parts of the image and convert it into patches. So essentially they're just taking the image and representing the image as text. And weirdly an LLM can work with that. It doesn't understand English, right? So a lot of things that we don't think of as language per se, like code, they're just talking about an LLM that has the capability to take in images as well as text, right? So it can look at the scene and you can ask it questions about that. So people have seen, for example, GPT-4o with vision. You can take a picture of your living room and send it to ChatGPT and ask it questions, and it'll be able to answer questions about what's in that room. So essentially, they're saying the onboard LLM also supports image input, which, any robot should, obviously. It would be pretty lame if the LLM that was interpreting your queries couldn't actually see what the robot was seeing.
Okay, thank you. Alexander, what would you have to see from Tesla on October 10th if Optimus is part of the presentation to say that, you know what, there's no way Figure AI will be able to match this pace of development?
As I said before, I think it needs to pick up stuff that is not fixed, like just scramble parts, and be able to like see that it's not one single block of parts, that it actually can understand that it's different parts, and also maybe be able to speak to it and for it to respond, maybe describe what it sees. That would be nice to see, I think.
Okay, great. Any other comments on the topic? Please request to speak. Otherwise, we're going to switch topics. All right, let's go back to FSD about Tesla. You said there is 12.5.1.2 with the employees, right? And I think you said the difference. Can you repeat the difference? Oh, you said it's on the .26 branch, so it's going to benefit. It's going to include all the benefits of the summer release. Do you think this is the one that's going to go out wide to majority of the fleet?
Hopefully, yes. And I think that's really important because, as you know, and I will just clarify this for other listeners. So pretty often there are two separate software branches going out. One is what I call FSD priority, and the other one is UI priority. So basically, the changes are happening in parallel. FSD is being developed in parallel with some other features in the software, and they're released independently from each other. And because of that, there are two separate branches. And every once in a while, every few months, Tesla will merge them and basically catch up on everything, so that those on the FSD priority branch would catch up.
About Tesla got a call.
So that's basically what's happening here, and it looks like it might be released this week if everything goes well.
Okay, and any news, any rumors around 12.6?
No rumors that I've heard. Nothing new, so that's probably we'll have to wait until the merge.
Okay, neural net.
Well, I actually had a bot question. I might have been a little late.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I was just wondering, as far as driving demand of humanoid bots, wondering if this group has an opinion on the demand is going to be driven by replacing humans, or if it's actually going to take capital investment from the purchaser for the bots to scale, meaning these bots can't directly replace humans. We have to invest a certain amount of money in changing things and making it bot friendly. I was just wondering about this limiting factor, if there's going to be capital expense to get these bots useful.
I mean, I don't see why it has to be one or the other. Can't it be both?
I mean, it could, but I'm just wondering, humans are fast. I've worked in manufacturing. I've seen just people putting labels on a plastic bag work as fast as so much faster than these bots, right? Even 24/7, they're just wildly outpacing them. They're so quick. So I'm just wondering, is that what it's going to take to make it scale?
Okay, let me ask Alexander. Alexander, what do you think it would take to make what we see in these videos, demo videos these days, and make it 2 times faster? How difficult is that?
Obviously, you need to make all the parts that is moving lighter for the motors to handle the higher torque, and then you need to be sure if you move faster that you're not hitting anything. But that confidence will probably come with time, and using better materials will probably make the bot faster, I think.
Do we have any information which bot uses lighter materials?
No, you can only guess. I've been talking about using magnesium alloys because that's like 33% lighter than aluminium. Only downside to using magnesium is that you have to coat it, otherwise it corrodes easily. And if it starts burning, you can't put out the fire.
Dallas?
I'd say hold on to your hats. I think they're going to surpass any speed from a manufacturing side of people pretty quickly. I mean,
How quickly?
I'm not ready for a coffee bet on this one, but I mean, I work in the industrial manufacturing space as well, and some of the robots we sell are mind-blowingly fast, or you need to, slow down the camera footage to watch it. So,
Yeah. Omar, do you have any thoughts on neural net's question?
No, I mean, look, I think these things are going to be way better than human. The evolution I've seen in self-driving cars where the thing could barely drive, it could barely drive straight for 1 minute. Okay. That's where it was when I started it. To then getting better and better, then sometimes doing a drive with zero takeover, then more and more, to then almost every drive being zero intervention, to then it's now doing it faster, quicker, like a human, more smoothly than a human. So, the human can do it really fast, but they're going to get bored after 3 minutes and they're going to start checking their Instagram. They're going to see that girl from their high school they used to have a crush on, and now they're not doing anything. That robot does not have a life. He may do it slowly, but he will sit there all day 24 hours a day plugged in, making that thing, and he's not going to complain about it unless you prompt him to. So, yeah, I think, and then the models are just going to keep getting more and more advanced. They're going to get bigger. They're going to put more compute, more data. The models are going to get more and more advanced. The robot will be working faster and faster. It's going to be no contest. The robot will be better for doing many things. Think of it like a computer, right? So there's almost nothing that we do without computers today, right? Oh, you want to cook? Well, look up the recipe on your computer. Oh, you want to do a business deal? Well, you're probably going to have to talk to somebody, maybe do a Zoom meeting, something like that. We use computers for everything. They're a universal tool. Similarly, robots they're a new form of computer. They're a computer with a body. So these are also going to be universal tools. We'll use them in pretty much everything we do.
Neural net.
Okay, so I was just thinking about a metric for this, and I was thinking, if the typical production worker is 8 hours a day, let's just say it's a straight hours, and they have a piece rate for that 8 hours. Technically, Optimus could be 3 times worse, right? If you're working 24 hours a day, right? You could be 3 times worse and be equal. So that's probably where it has to get to, right? You can be up to 3 times worse. And anything beyond that is money in the bank, unless I'm not thinking correctly.
Sorry, can you repeat how did you come up with 3 times?
I'm just thinking an 8-hour shift. So you have an 8-hour shift normally versus, 24 hours, 3 shifts a day.
Well, the factories have multiple shifts. So the one human worker is only coming in 8 hours. They can still run 24 hours
Well, I'll
a
tell
day
you what,
today.
the best factories have 3 shifts, but I don't know that they all do. That's demand based, right? And these things can turn on and off based on demand too, which might be pretty cool. All right, think about it.
Dallas.
I can kind of attest to or touch on this topic because I do spend a lot of time in manufacturing facilities. A huge cost there that comes to mind is mistakes, and especially in the aerospace and orthopedics and expensive industries like that, any mistake can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages. So worse, do you mean slower or worse as in accuracy of job?
And I'm just saying in rate. I was just saying in piece rate. I'm going to assume that the accuracy is there and the quality of the product is there. I'm just talking rate and time. Wasn't going to get into those other dimensions. Those are other dimensions that affect the outcome, but just thinking from a rate perspective.
I like Thunder.
Well, I think there are some tasks in some factories that is really, I think, really hard to make a robot do. Like I work a lot with CNC machines, and operators for those machines usually pick up a part, they measure the part. If they find anything wrong with the part, they have to offset the measurements. And also, if something breaks in the machine, you have to change tools and stuff, and you have to exert certain momentum to put the tool back in, and so on. And I think that's going to be a really complex thing for a humanoid robot to do.
The changeover. Yep.
Sierra, any other thoughts on Optimus?
I'm just excited to see the next demo.
Can you give us what is happening with your subscriptions? I saw that they came back to you and said it doesn't meet quality standards or something, your posts, which I have no idea how that happened, because I think your posts are some of the highest quality content I see on X.
Thank you. Yeah, I applied over a year ago for subscriptions, and follow up occasionally via messaging premium support. And they finally answered me today saying that I have been denied approval for a subscription. And they cited that my account doesn't meet quality standards, and then they attach the creator's rule book document, and there's actually nothing in there titled quality at all. I read through with a fine tooth comb. I combed through those docs, and I'm not really sure what they're referring to. I don't post anything political. I don't really post any controversial content. I just post AI and robotics content and share cool robots. So, yeah, it's a bummer.
Yeah, that's wild. I hope that somebody looks into it a little deeper. I saw in the reply somebody said looks like a auto-generated reply, and I hope they get that fixed soon. The subscription review process, it really needs to be revamped, I think. Just overall, it takes way too long, and I think that's a ridiculous decision. All right. And last night we had an AI space. We named this space for now AI Amateurs. You can listen to it. The recording, it's on my profile. I didn't post it on YouTube this episode because I didn't realize it was going to turn into hundreds of people coming into the space. I thought it was going to be much smaller. So from now on, I'm going to broadcast it on YouTube as well at the same time. And we're focusing on AI developments, kind of in general, more on the scientific side of things, as opposed to commercial company analysis type of stuff that we do here sometimes, most of the time. All right. Omar, do you think 12.5.1.2 is going to go out wide? Do you think this is the version that needs to go out? Also, when I was reviewing yesterday's space for my patron summary, I remembered that you said 12.5.1.1 is having more critical disengagements than 12.5.1. And this is also apparent on Tesla FSD tracker data as well. The miles between critical disengagements has declined a little bit with this latest version. Is that still the case for you? Do you have any updated thoughts on it? Would you like to elaborate on it a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, you know, sometimes when a new version comes out, you see more critical takeovers. But then I drove it yesterday, and every single drive was zero intervention. It was just perfect. It didn't make any mistakes. So I think it looks good. I think 12.5.1.2 will go wide. Almost everyone I've talked to has just said, wow. There's maybe one or two people who said, I like 12.5.1 better. But pretty much everybody I've talked to has just said, wow, this is just an incredible release. And Hardware 3 people should be getting it this week, assuming they stick to Elon's schedule, which is going to be super exciting. And I think when everybody tries this, they are just going to say, wow, I can't believe Hardware 3 can do what I'm seeing this car do.
All right. Thank you. Ron?
So I have a plaid that I use personally, but for business, I have two gigs. One requires a big ass truck. I have a Ram 2500 that I'm considering switching to a Cybertruck, and I have two questions regarding that. It's need to put it right now. It's I'm using my Ram to pull a wood-fired pizza oven. By the way, I'm inside this thing right now. If anybody's in the Hudson Valley area in New York and you want some free pizza, swing by. Um, DM me, I'll tell you where I am. Anyway, so this thing weighs about 9 to 10,000 pounds, and I'm thinking about trading in the 2500 for a Cybertruck. I don't know if it's going to be able to cut the mustard as far as long distance travels with this thing. And then second, regarding full self driving, does anybody know if a Cybertruck will be able to activate FSD if it has something that it's towing?
Yeah, great question. So, the towing on an electric vehicle obviously uses a lot more energy than when you're not towing. So if you're towing shorter distances, like less than 150 miles, then you should be fine, even with the Cybertruck Foundation series that's out now. They do have a range extender. It's an extra battery pack that you can put in the bed. It takes about a third of the bed space, but that'll take you up to about 470 miles of range. So in that case, it should be able to do at least, you know, 230 to 240 miles, even towing something like a pizza oven. So it can definitely handle those use cases. Even long distances, you just kind of have to stop to charge. For FSD, they are just about to release FSD for the Cybertruck in mid-August, so we'll have more answers about how it works when that happens. But from what we've seen in other cars like the Model Y, there are people who've used FSD while towing, and they say it seems to work. So it's, I would expect that you would be able to use it even when you're towing, but I'm not 100% sure yet, as currently none of the Cybertrucks even have FSD yet.
Yeah, but like the edge cases of like the wide turns, obviously backing up is going to be. I mean, it's difficult for a human driver at times to navigate when you're backing up with you're trailing something kind of long. But like considering for wide turns and those, they're not even edge cases. They're kind of typical if you have a huge. You know,
Okay, thank you,
Yeah.
Ryan.
trailer,
Your
things
sound
attached
off
to.
a little
So
bad. Thank you. Neural net.
Yeah, just to comment on the Cybertruck towing, I think our Henzig on X is a great resource. And when you look at towing a dual axle, right, you're getting into big weight, 9,000-10,000 pounds. You're approaching 1 kWh per mile. So if you think about the Cybertruck with 120x kilowatt hour pack, you're down to 100 miles if you're towing big weight before you have to charge.
Yeah, you're welcome to invite that person in here so we can ask him some questions as well in future episodes, or if they're available now. Now is fine too. Thank you. Omar, let's talk about Lucid. So Lucid announced earnings last night. Rivian is going to announce earnings tonight. What came out of Lucid's earnings yesterday? I know you listened to the earnings call as well. If you could give us a few highlights.
Well, not much has changed. The company continues to burn a ton of cash. They are ramping up production of a new product, the Lucid Gravity. The big news was they've secured a commitment from an affiliate of the PIF, basically the Saudi PIF, to put $1.5 billion of additional capital into the company. I think they had a cash and cash equivalents position of 1.5 billion. They say their total liquidity after this is around 4 billion, and that should keep them going, they say, through the end of 2025. So, I mean, this is a company that has about 6 months left to live if they hadn't raised money. And the fundraising at their current levels of cash flow or cash burn uh, add about 6 months to their lifetime. So this is really a company that is depending on infusions of external capital to survive. And that external capital has been delivered very reliably by the Saudi PIF. For whatever reason, they keep putting money into this thing. I mean, they're going to end up owning the whole thing. But, you know, if that changes, if, for example, let's say the Saudis run into a situation where they're in a little bit of financial trouble, maybe oil prices fall or something like that, and they can't afford to continue pumping money into this thing, then things might get a little tricky. But for now, it seems like they're just good to keep putting money in. And the company certainly isn't making money off its operations. Sales are very low, only a few thousand units of deliveries in the quarter. But they got an injection of capital, and that should keep them going for a few more quarters. So that's kind of the story.
Thank you. Neural net?
Just wanted to ask this group's opinion if you think Lucid will go private, and will it be above or below $4.20? Today's stock price, $3.18.
Yeah, it is possible. But here's the interesting question is, why haven't they done that so far? Right? Why do they keep putting money into the company instead of taking it private? So whatever that reason is, I don't know the reason. Whatever that reason is that going to change in the next year or two? Go ahead.
I'm thinking they're just soaking retail, and once they've soaked retail, once they've just exhausted retail, then they'll go private. That's my theory.
I mean, they are probably, if they keep putting money into the company like this, they'll end up owning 100% of it, right? At some point, it's going to be delisted. I think that they see the access to public markets, and especially US capital markets, as just a source of liquidity, right? The minute they take this thing private, which they're inevitably going to have to do, all those shares that that they bought over years and years, putting billions and billions and billions, are suddenly not easily convertible into US dollars. Frankly, the people who own that equity are probably never going to see cash again for those shares. And so that's probably why they've held out on it. But it seems like going private is the obvious move. They would be able to not share their financial statements, which could help the company. They don't have to deal with the bad press from that. And they could more quietly wind it down, or handle the finance. Have to deal with the bad press from that. And they could more quietly wind it down, or handle the finances outside of the public eye.
Neural net.
Yeah, and not to say that going private is all bad, in the sense that what if you're just, you have deep pockets and you're really, so I can see multiple sides of
Okay.
the argument. It's not like they're all bad. Maybe they
Okay.
just want it that bad.
Omar, do you think Rivian results are going to be like, how do you think Rivian results tonight are going to be different from Lucid's results last night?
Well, I'm really interested to see Rivian's results compared to Lucid's. Lucid's were a bit of a snore fest, to be honest. I fell asleep during the earnings call listening to them. They're like, our motors are so efficient. We're going to save so much money because our motors are so efficient. And then it's like, okay, how do you make them? He's like, we use this radial architecture where it's like super hard to build. And it's like, dude, nobody cares if your EV's 200 watt hours per mile instead of 220. If the motor's so hard to build that you can't make these things profitably, you can't sell them at a low price and no one wants to buy them. Duh. Like, this company is so obviously lost. And their sales are just pretty inconsequential. Rivian, actually, people seem to like their products. They have a good brand, but they're ramping the R2. They're in much more of a precarious situation in many ways. And this is the first earnings call since the Volkswagen deal. We'll hopefully, get some more color on that, get analysts digging in a bit, and we get to look at the balance sheet for the first time since the deal. Right? So what does the business really look like, um, that they had to take a deal from Volkswagen on these terms? So I think
Yeah.
it's going to be a much more interesting call than yesterday's.
Okay. All right. I'm looking forward to it. And if we have any Rivian fans in the audience, they're welcome to come up and maybe share their predictions, what they're looking for from tonight's earnings call, earnings release. I would love to hear from Rivian fans if they're available. They are my favorite group of people. Sierra, I see there's some discussion going on in the replies about the length of fingers of Optimus versus Figure AI. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, I was hoping we could circle back to this. So big shout out to Mike, who in the comment section called out something that I initially did not notice watching the figure 2 demo, and I watched it a few times. And that is that the new figure bot appears to have digits that are almost all entirely the same length, which, with the exception of the thumb. Now, if you watched the Elon Lex interview, Elon spent quite a few minutes talking about the importance of having fingers that are actually different in size. Like your pinky finger might not feel super useful, but if you lose it, you are bound to miss it because our having fingers that are different lengths help us with fine motor dexterity. Very important. So I anticipate that Optimus's hands will be more dexterous, especially with fine motor skills, than the new figure bot.
Thank you. And thank you, Mike. I pinned at the top the reply from Mike talking about this as well. Dallas?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Rivian shareholder. I personally, I'm just a fan of the company's kind of like whole vibe. I get a premium feel in their cars. I think there's a future a little ways down the road where you can kind of marry the badass factor of FSD software on a premium feeling outdoor vehicle like a Rivian. I mean, that's kind of the perfect case for me. So, I see the stock valuable at the moment. I think it IPO'd insanely high, and I think there's a lot of upside on that one. So I'm looking forward to the earnings call for sure.
Why are you driving a Tesla if you're such a Rivian fan?
Because I value FSD more than the physical characteristics of a car. And I love the Teslas. I think they're super cool and modern and sleek. But I mean, none of us are blind to the fact that there's a plasticky feel when you get inside. You sit inside of Rivian, you're like, oh, real leather. That's kind of fun. And this feels more like a Range Rover. And I know there's a lot of Range Rover haters out there, but I get a premium feel in a Rivian that I don't get in a Tesla. So.
Okay, I'm gonna let people respond to that, but first, there's a discussion going on YouTube live chat about what happened to Omar. That he gulped a few times and had some breathing issues just a second ago, and people are saying Omar swallowed the bug. Everyone noticed and will never forget. Omar, would you like to clarify?
Yeah, I'm okay. I didn't swallow any bugs. Um, personally, I think Rivian kind of gives me more Ford than like premium vehicle personally. And people who've driven it have said like, yeah, the suspension failed or I've had this issue. It's a new product, so I don't really, sometimes you kind of make an image, you do marketing, but then you sort of spend time with the product in real life and you realize this really isn't some, you know, top tier luxury product. This isn't really up to the standards of Mercedes or anything like that. It's really, a car manufactured in Illinois by a startup. It's more of like a Ford type thing. And, they've done a really good job of adopting a lot of ideas Tesla pioneered, the big screen, software updates, that kind of stuff. So it's definitely pretty modern in those ways. Whereas, the Tesla, I think just the little things, the software experience, the way you don't have to have a key. Rivian until recently was giving everyone a key fob. It's just one, I don't have to worry about losing it. Where's my key? I don't have to worry about, oh, I left my key in the car. Now someone can go steal the car. It's just, so much simplicity in my life. I get in the Mercedes EV, it's got a start stop button. So I get in, I got to turn it on, I got to turn it off. I can never figure out if it's on or off or on but not started. It's so confusing. With the Tesla, I just walk in and out, right? And by the way, you look at the new Model 3, you look at the Cybertruck, way better materials and comfort than the Rivian, I think, personally. But, it's all these little things with the software. It's pulling up to my garage and it sees that I'm at my house and automatically opens my garage door for me. And I pull out and it automatically closes it for me. It's, pushing a button and having the car do the entire drive for me, as you said, of course. So, I mean, that to me is the most luxurious thing possible. is like having a built-in digital chauffeur that can take you anywhere. But I like Rivian too. I like their products. But I kind of think of it as like you know, a Suburban or like a Ford Explorer kind of product personally.
Neural net.
So I just want to ask the Rivian owners, older Tesla owners remember transitioning from production hell to service hell. And I think I would like to understand if Rivian owners believe they are in service hell. And I would also like to say admitting the problem is the first step to recovery. So let me know.
All right. I mean, if you have any other Rivian fans that want to come up, preferably ones that own a Rivian, want to talk to the product, want to talk to the stock, you're welcome to come up. Earlier, we talked about Optimus quite extensively, actually. I thought that was a really good discussion. If anybody wants to come up and talk about it as well, you're welcome. We talked about Lucid AI's new robot unveiled. Recommend people go back and listen to that part. A couple of news from the automotive industry related to Optimus. There's a Chinese robotics company called UB Tech, that is kind of at a similar stage and is already testing its robots with NIO, Zeekr, and other Chinese companies. So these are three companies I'm going to be following closely: Tesla, Figure AI, and UB Tech. And then in other news in automotive industry, Continental is looking to spin off its automotive operations. Continental is looking to spin off its automotive operations. Last year, this division generated more than $20 billion in euros, 20 billion euros in revenue, and employs 100,000 people. I thought that was an interesting development. All right. Omar, just before we started this space, Linda Yacarino posted a video. I didn't get a chance to watch the video, but Elon reposted it and said something along the lines of, "We tried to work with them for 2 years, and now it's war." What is going on?
Well, since Elon bought Twitter, advertisers have boycotted them and their revenue has fallen a lot. So they're very upset about this. So they're trying to sue them. I personally don't know if you can really sue somebody for not buying your ads. They're trying to use the Antitrust Act. And I'm not a lawyer. Maybe there is actually some legal merit to this. But I would suggest maybe trying to appease the advertisers, work with them, launch new ad programs rather than, trying to sue them. Obviously they all sort of decided to not advertise on X. There was really a lot of centralized control here, but I would be surprised to see a court actually find in their favor for this case, and certainly don't think there's any criminal liability, as Elon suggested.
If we have other views in the audience, if they want to talk about it, you're welcome to come up to the speaker board. So, okay, so X is suing advertisers. How many advertisers are we talking? And do we know any names?
Well, I don't think they're suing the advertisers, but there's sort of these advocacy groups that pressure the brands to not spend. So, for example, I think they're called, the something for honest media or something, or, safe media or something like that. So they're suing this organization that essentially was behind pressuring all the brands to stop advertising on X as a way of pressuring them to change some of their policies.
Understood. Rich Bira.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
So just
I'm having trouble connecting to the internet.
For
more info.
Sorry about that, guys. So I kind of take a look at this antitrust kind of way of approaching this. If the advertisers colluded together to create a, let's say, stop advertising on X, it's somewhat similar to what's happening in the real estate world right now in regards to the government coming against the commissions that the agents are making, and they're saying that there was collusion between the Zillows of the world and the National Association of Real Estate to keep the commission at 5.5 to 6%, and there was never that collusion between Zillow and that stuff to create that kind of, well, that's what the fee is in real estate when you're selling property. Here, the way that I read through, some of what Linda had posted, there's openly been collusion between, admittedly, between these advertisers. So that's to me what the antitrust is, and I'm just using a recent example of the government going after the real estate community.
Neural nets.
And just wanted to clarify that antitrust is basically you are limiting market power of a firm, and that's a wonderful law we have in capitalism. So that's where we're at. That's the problem.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on this topic? Otherwise, let's talk about the recent verdict against Google. Omar, did you get a chance to read the verdict or maybe review some of the material that came out about the verdict?
Yeah, a little bit. So essentially, they're saying that they violated their uh, monopoly on search by giving preferential treatment in some cases, and that was essentially against the law.
Does it have any implications for Tesla in the future?
Not directly. This is mostly a sort of Google internal matter. I mean, all tech giants at one time, Microsoft went through a similar antitrust probe. Pretty much every company you can think of has gone through them, especially these major tech giants. So I think Google will get through this, but as we really look at this major threat to the search market from AI models, this is not really coming at a great time. They're already trying to save themselves from this major threat. And here the government comes in and they want to break up their search monopoly.
Do you own any shares in Google?
I actually owned 25 shares and sold them when the decision came out.
Interesting. So you think this is material information if you took action like that? I mean, even though it's just a few shares.
I don't know if it is or if it isn't, but I said, let me just sell it and we'll figure it out later. I looked at the shares, they were a little down from where I bought them. And I said, okay, let me just sell it and then I can look into this. If I think there's an opportunity, I can always buy some more shares, but sometimes the fastest thing to do is just sell before everybody else does while you assess the impact.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Please request to speak. Early on, we talked about Optimus quite a bit. I recommend people go back and listen to that part. While we have someone coming up on the speaker board, just a quick note that this episode is sponsored by Joa Life. You can use the code at the top, TSLA Live, for 5% of your purchases. Hawaii, you go ahead.
Omar, do you think this is a good opportunity for X to move into the search engine field and give competition to Google because of this?
Um, I think the future of search is actually LLMs. The model is actually going to be able to look through the internet, including a real-time index of the internet, and find the things that you want. And it'll actually be able to do that much better than Google ever could. And Google knows that, and everybody else knows that. So absolutely, X could be in the future where you go to search more and more instead of Google, as crazy as that sounds. And this sort of effort to break up the monopoly could be in X's favor. The case really centered around the business practice of Google paying billions of dollars to be set as the default search engine in every major browser. So, for example, they pay Apple billions of dollars a year, they pay Firefox, everybody. As a matter of fact, the majority of Firefox's revenue is just this deal with Google that comes in every year. So, it's potentially actually quite disruptive to the businesses of those two companies. I mean, for Apple, a multi-billion dollar agreement is just a drop in the bucket, but it is billions of dollars. For Firefox, it could be quite material. And I'm not sure if that practice is going to have to end, but they found that the behavior violated Section 2 of the Sherman Antitrust Act, which addresses monopolistic practices. The idea is, well, if the biggest search engine can just buy their default preference and pay billions of dollars to remain the default, how is anybody actually going to go and compete with them? And this disincentivizes people from even starting a search company because, what chance do you have of competing against this 800-pound gorilla of Google? So that's certainly an interesting aspect of it that'll affect Apple and Mozilla and others.
Neural net.
Just like to add some color to how big that gorilla is, because I think sometimes numbers matter. Million seconds is 11.6 days. A billion seconds is 31.7 years. Millions to billions is an order of magnitude that I don't think we appreciate. It's a level of scale and difficulty that takes deep money and connections to achieve.
Waymo announced that they're expanding service area. They're going pretty well. I mean, they're expanding really well. People like the quality of the service. They seem to be giving commercial rides. It's becoming a material service at this point. It's not just a test bed. It's adding value to the cities. Do you see Waymo as a growing threat to Tesla FSD robotaxi business?
I don't really see it as a threat. I do use Waymo. I enjoy using their service. It is the only real driverless service, the best driverless service in the world. Uh, I would say actually the most advanced driverless service we've seen, and it's open to the public in Arizona. It's open to the public in San Francisco. It's invite only in Los Angeles, but I bet you they're gonna eventually take away the invite there. So, they're expanding. It's not like a rapid expansion. You look at the service area, it's like a little bit more like, oh, great. Now I can go to Daly City now, you know, which is nice. I'm glad I can go to Daly City now. I'm glad I can go to Hollywood. My friend's apartment was right on the border of the geofence with Waymo in Los Angeles. So we couldn't actually go to her apartment. We had to like walk down to Santa Monica Boulevard and then take it from there. So that was annoying. And this expansion now will allow us to actually have it come all the way to our apartment. So that's great, but it's a relatively small service expansion. What would really make me say, wow, that's scary for Tesla is if they said, and we're now active in 10 new cities, you know. But they're rolling out relatively slowly, right? I'd like to see that pace accelerate significantly. Um, and Tesla really is leapfrogging them in driving performance. Like FSD 12511 drives better and more human-like than a Waymo, which is crazy. And you're like, wow, a hardware 3 car is going to be able to drive better than a six-figure Waymo in terms of the smoothness, the feel, and I think eventually, you know, in terms of even miles per intervention, I think they're going to leapfrog them. The end-to-end deep learning approach and the data advantage, the compute advantage is, really starting to show. So, Waymo is great. They have driverless. Tesla doesn't have driverless, but I really see them as complementary today because, sometimes I'll take a Waymo because I don't want to take my Tesla, right? So normally, let's say I'm going to like somewhere in San Francisco and there's not a lot of parking there. So I might take Uber or Lyft normally, but now I take a Waymo if I don't want to park. But then there are other times where I'm going somewhere and I, can't take a Waymo there because Waymo doesn't go there. Let's say I'm going to Napa or I'm going to Berkeley or something, or I want to have my car there, then I take the Tesla. So actually, people who use Waymo are actually more likely, I think, to be open to FSD on their cars because they've seen that it can work. And I think that people who have FSD are also going to be more open to Waymo. So their businesses don't overlap today. In the future, they're obviously on a collision course because Tesla wants to offer robotaxi and Waymo wants to offer robotaxi. And, who's going to be the one that wins in the consumer market? That's a future battle yet to come. But today, with Tesla primarily selling ADAS and Waymo primarily operating in select markets, they're more complementary than competitive.
Thank you. We have two hands I'm going to get to in a second. Just a quick note that Uber announced earnings this morning, and they beat both on the top line and the bottom line, and the stock is up 11% right now. Sierra.
I just wanted to add to the Waymo Tesla competition conversation that a little co-opetition never hurt nobody. I lived in Manhattan for a few years, and prior to Uber and Lyft and all of the ride sharing services, you could take a yellow cab or a gypsy cab. Um, and there are different scenarios in which you might use each, but they coexisted beautifully for many, many years. So, and we have Uber and Lyft now and other rideshare services. So I don't see why there isn't room for both in the market.
Hawaii.
Omar, I don't want Waymo to go away, but how much longer can they go losing the money they're losing?
Are they though? Do we know they are?
Well, they're estimated to be losing about $2 billion a year. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, especially if they try and expand more. I'm actually right after this going to see the Waymo exhibit at the Peterson Museum. They have multiple generations of Waymo cars there. But the big thing for Waymo is really they they are not really going to be in a position to generate cash from the business anytime soon. Not with this robo-taxi style operation. A business model where they own all the cars in the fleet is never going to be competitive with Uber and Lyft. So the only path I think to positive cash flow for them is really licensing or working more directly with manufacturers, and we'll see what they do there. But it's going to continue to be a money loser for some time. But I think Waymo has done an amazing thing, spending billions of dollars investing in this. They've broken a lot of ground. We have a regulatory structure that now exists for autonomous cars in states like Arizona and California that's fairly well defined. We've learned what to do when there's an emergency. We've seen all the situations that happen in the real world that you can't predict. Things like, people, of course, leave their door open. The Waymo says, hey, shut the door. People sometimes throw up. They've put little barf bags in the car. People sometimes jump on the Waymos and destroy them. So it's been absolutely invaluable having this going from science fiction to reality, all the sort of institutional learning that's going on that's preparing us for scaling this to all across the country.
Neural net.
Just like to ask this board or anyone in this audience if they remember before Uber, before apps, we used to have to physically chase cabs in New York City. And the faster you were, you could get the cab. That was a reality. Like, we actually had to chase rides. There was no app. You had two legs. That was it.
I think New York still does that, by the way.
Just
Grant.
wondering. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm curious what. So I'm hearing the comments around Waymo losing money. I'm just curious how much information we really have. When we say things like they're losing $2 billion a year, is that kind of like a net income type basis, or is it that they're investing $2 billion in the build out of 10,000 of these things that are going to generate a ton of incremental cash flow next year? I think that's an important distinction to make.
Well, Alphabet is a publicly traded company. They own Google and also many other companies. On their earning statements, they fold Waymo and other companies into a line item called Other Bets. So the Other Bets line item is about $4 billion, and Waymo is estimated to be around 50% of that, based on what we've seen in the 10K and the 10Q, and also from the executives' comments on the earnings calls. So we don't have the exact numbers, but they do report the Other Bets segment regularly, and we have a rough idea of the composition of Waymo within that segment.
Grant.
Yeah, I'm going to look at it. Do you know if it's CapEx? Is it cash flow or net income?
Well, it's a lot of different things. When they talk about this, it's really just sort of an expense item. That could include things like, obviously, as you mentioned, purchases of vehicles, which then are assets that are depreciated over time. You can have stock-based comp included in there, pretty much everything related to the company, even just, SG&A, office space, that type of thing.
Yeah, I don't think, Grant,
The revenue is basically almost immaterial, right?
right.
Even 50,000 a week, you say, let's give it 10,000, right? That's, 26 million a year compared to 2,000 million in expenses.
Yeah, I think there's also recent news that, so Alex posted, parent company Alphabet recently committed $5 billion more to Waymo, which obviously is funding the losses. Like, it's not like they're starting a factory to produce these cars. So they're still money losing. Doesn't appear to be any sort of milestone they're going to reach to become profitable. And even if they break even, even if they become break even, it's not going to be a huge money generator or material part of Google's profits anytime soon. Grant?
Yeah, I just looked. It was operating income. So, yeah, it could be interesting. I'll probably look a little more just to understand the investments. But I guess the way I would think about it is it's a function of two things. Like, how much are they spending on actual CapEx? Like, there's a universe where they're spending $2 billion, spending up 10,000 robotaxis to deploy across the top 10 metro areas, which would be pretty bad for, the outlook for Tesla's robotaxi business in my mind. But, I do think that these things have a possibility of generating real cash. Obviously, the costs need to come down. I don't know if anyone knows what the latest cost of a Waymo is, but I assume that that's going down over time. And I guess it feels a little strange to say that, we believe robotaxis are going to be this wildly profitable business with a ton of EV, like enterprise value. But, Waymo's is kind of meaningless. That feels weird.
Well, the issue really is that nobody has figured out how to turn robotaxis into a business yet. We have figured out how to make them work and make them work pretty reliably. We can make them go out and give rides in the real world, and they actually crash less than humans and cause fewer injuries than humans do. So that's a big step. But in terms of turning it into an actual business, that part we haven't quite figured out yet. And there's significant challenges. There's, no driver in the car, but there's several support staff behind the scene per car who are making things run. People in the call centers who are answering questions that the Waymos ask, people who charge and clean the cars, people who have to drive behind the cars in a van to be ready to intervene and pick up the car if necessary within a few minutes. So these are operational costs that the business has in order to do what they're doing, and they haven't figured out how to make it a real business yet. So, it's great that they are running a real driverless service. It's super exciting to see. I recommend everybody go to Arizona or San Francisco and try it out. Like, it'll change your perspective on things actually seeing it firsthand. And anyone can download the Waymo app and do it. But it's kind of like saying, hey, GM's got the EV1. They're out selling it in multiple cities. It's over for Tesla, if Tesla had existed at the time. What ultimately matters is who can dominate the market, who can scale. Yes, this proves that robo taxis are going to be a thing. They can work, they are real, and all of the benefits we've discussed, people are now seeing them with their own eyes. They're experiencing them firsthand. But this battle is far from over. The war to scale autonomous technology across the country has not even begun.
Why do you think they're taking so much time in Austin? They've been testing in Austin for more than a year, I think. And they even announced it in some of their press releases, but they're not operational just yet.
Well, Waymo is a service that achieves high reliability through intense mapping. So they scan the whole city and create a LiDAR scan of the whole city. The LiDAR on the car can then localize its position within a centimeter, far more accurate than GPS, by doing a LiDAR scan and comparing it to the past LiDAR scan. So they know all the lanes on the map, they know how everything connects together, they know how exactly which lane they're in, where it goes. Everything is all in this high definition map. And more than that, they start testing. They test it on multiple different routes. They try all the different streets, and they may say, hey, okay, on this street, there tend to be problems with this. There tend to be drunk people. And they actually curate the best routes where the car has the lowest chance of failure. And they'll sometimes even go a little bit out of their way to choose those best routes. So it's not really something like FSD where you can just release it and it works everywhere. There's an intense amount of work and curation per city that's going into mapping every city and actually personalizing the driver over time for that city. And they roll it out very slowly and cautiously. They start with invite only, then they gradually expand over time, gradually expand the service area, and it doesn't all just go live at once.
Yeah. You know what I just noticed? Today's space has been very high quality discussions on so many fronts. And it's probably because machine is not here that we get to have these high quality discussions. I'm just kidding. We are running low on mom jokes. So anyway, let's do a quick recap on macro, Omar. Markets are generally up today. I see Bradford in the audience if he wants to come up and talk about it a little bit. Dow Jones up 2%, Nasdaq up 2.5%, S&P 500 up 2.4%. Uber announced good results, up 11%. Nvidia recovered 7%. Palantir up 13%. Even CrowdStrike is up today. So is the worst behind us, do you think?
Maybe not, maybe so. We'll see. But one thing that I've learned is the best performing days in the market typically come right after the worst days. So this is a little bit counterintuitive. When the moment where everyone's panicked is actually where you're going to see the biggest jump in the next few days, typically, because you're starting from a lower base. So
Just one quick announcement. There's some news a few months ago. Donald Trump says he will be doing, this is from Donald Trump himself, on Monday, he will be doing a major interview with Elon Musk. This is at the top of our screens. Thank you, Tesla Hype. And also Leah Nielsen. That's interesting. I want to ask a related question too. I guess Trump was gifted a Cybertruck by an influencer, and there were some videos of Trump kind of poking around in his wrapped Cybertruck. This relationship is growing exponentially.
yeah, I don't know if he gave him the Cybertruck, but he might have just shown it to him. I think it might have been his Cybertruck. But certainly this administration does seem to be more friendly towards Tesla and Elon than the Biden Harris administration. But who knows? Maybe Kamala will roll out in a Cybertruck too. That might win over some voters.
Dude, how amazing would that be if that actually happened? Somebody should give her a ride on FSD, get her into a Cybertruck, and I think a lot of these problems would blow over. Neural net?
Just want to say I saw that video and I believe Trump was absolutely impressed with the UI. So I'd like to give kudos to Tesla and their team that just makes the most impressive UI ever because it's just undeniable. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Somebody in the replies said Brewster says the Cybertruck was a gift to Trump. He gave it to him. So I kind of thought too that to Omar when I first saw the videos. It was just kind of a preview, an interview, and showing him the UI and inside of the Cybertruck and everything. But I think it was a gift. So we might
Oh
soon
wow!
see. Yeah, we
I'm not
might.
even sure if they can really drive cars. Can they?
Yeah, I don't know. Do you think he's gonna drive the Cybertruck to the White House? That would be a sight.
Yeah,
Hawaii.
I don't think the president's allowed to drive, but they could put it on the lawn. It would look nice.
Maybe. Hawaii.
Omar, did you see the Tucker Carlson or also Trump? What is your take on the big progress that's going to bring towards people seeing the Cybertruck and believing in it?
I mean, there's no doubt about it. Trump has a lot of fans. People look at him all across the country. That's like another Kim Kardashian, if not better, right? And there's a lot of people who hate him, of course, but the right is looking at EVs. I mean, this is the side that hated EVs, that said they're no good, and we're actually getting them to take a look and talk about them and appear in them. I just posted a clip of my subscriber space where I had a subscriber named Heather from Georgia, and you can hear her, and she said, "Oh, I just used FSD 1251 and it drove me all around. This is incredible." And she's like, "Oh, I found out about Elon from X, and then I found out about a Tesla. Now I'm getting the Tesla," right? Everybody's talking about the angry, woke, blue haired liberal who says, "Oh, Elon, I'm never going to buy a Tesla. I hate you." Nobody's talking about that guy in the South who now is showing an electric car to their friends and family, showing FSD to their friends and family for the first time. I mean, we need everybody driving EVs, not just Democrats, but Republicans too. So if the liberals want to get upset and buy a Ford or a Rivian EV because they hate Elon, honestly, they could use the sales. They're kind of struggling with inventory on those products. And, it might not be the worst idea to try and shake this sort of partisan thing that, EVs are just for Democrats and actually market it as something that everybody should have, regardless of whether you're on the left or the right.
Bear on board. Bear on board. Magic?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Does it make you feel welcome when I say that? Recognized?
I feel like it's a warm welcome, you know.
Like a royalty?
Yeah, something like that. Hey, just wanted to ask a question. I know that Elon posted something regarding not, being a little bit negative towards its advertisers. So, do you guys have any comment on if that's a good business move to go after your ex clients, ex customers for
We
Twitter?
talked about it already. I don't want to, you can go back and listen. We had a really good conversation in the absence of about machines and Optimus and Figure AI and so many other topics as well, including the one you just mentioned. Omar, would you like to give a one sentence summary for Magic, who's going to be lazy and not listen to the recording?
Yeah, I don't think they're suing the advertisers directly, but generally I agree with you that it might not be the best way to win them back. But that seems to be the strategy they're taking. So we'll see how it goes.
Do you think Elon sees advertisers as an integral part of X, say 5-10 years from today?
Well, he is not. I mean, the most of the business's revenue is advertising, or it was, right? And it probably continues to be. So if you're really trying to optimize the business from a revenue and earnings perspective, you're bending over backwards to make those advertisers happy. And he instead told them GFY, right? So, he's not really the guy to kiss. You can see the results in the P&L. So, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe Linda Yaccarino has to go sort of do that. Maybe over time it'll blow over. I think Elon feels that people should be able to say whatever they want. He's really focusing on the users first, as opposed to letting the advertisers come before the users. And that's really going to hurt the core advertising business, and it has. But maybe in time they can do something about it. I think what he's really trying to do is just make a moral case that it's wrong that you should support free speech. But I think the advertisers would say, hey, I don't want my ad running next to some conspiracy theory about whatever that may come off as kind of hateful.
Neural net.
Yeah, I think maybe long term this isn't a good opinion, but I think Elon sees advertising as a means to an end. Hopefully, payments take over that revenue stream, and he's freed from that burden. As an engineer, advertising and marketing is just the complete opposite of what we do. So I don't know. I think that's whether, and advertisers may have priced that in, even though they may win this suit and say that, hey, there's been some market control at the same time. I think Elon's heart and feelings on advertising remain unchanged.
Okay. All right, we were talking about macro. While we have Magic on here, let's hear Magic's thoughts on what happened in the last 24, 48 hours in the markets. And Magic, do you think the worst is behind the global markets now that they're up today quite a bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting week. I don't think we're behind it. I think in the short term, central banks will come together, put together some plans, reassure the markets. The issue is we have way, way, way too much debt, corporate and personal household debt, even just globally. So, I mean, we really got to watch Japan right now because that might be the driver. But there are other levers that can throw a wrench into things. So I still think everything's really, especially U.S. equities, are very, very, very expensive across the board. So we'll see. Short term, I think we're going to hold up next week or two, and then we'll see.
Okay. So I follow macro news under the account Macro Analyst, who is the co-host. You can follow that account if you want more macro information. One interesting fact I learned in recent days is that there's a lot of macro bulls out there that are talking about how Atlanta Fed's GDP now is showing 2.5–3% growth for Q3 already. And interesting fact is that in Q4 2007, right before the recession started in December 2007, the GDP growth was first released as positive. And Q3 2007 GDP growth was very positive, it's like 3.9%. And nobody at that time thought Bear Stearns or Lehman Brothers would collapse within the following 12 months. So it's an interesting discussion going on the macro front right now. There is really divided groups of people about whether we're going to go into a recession or not. If we do, how deep it's going to be. So this is a topic that I'm very much focused on these days. Magic?
Yeah, some good points there that and I want to highlight to everybody. The government and the Fed lie to you, and their job is to lie to you. It's kind of a must-lie situation. When they printed all that money in 2020, they knew there was going to be issues, and they lied about the extent, because it's kind of like when somebody asks you, like, if you had a girlfriend and says, "Oh, do I look fat?" Do you answer correctly, or do you tell a lie and keep everything cool, right?
Yeah, this is conspiracy theory stuff. I think this space is above conspiracy theory BS. But
so the Fed. So all right. So the government hasn't revised job numbers for the last year.
The revisions obviously come about, but you're assigning an intent when you say they lie to you, and you have absolutely zero proof of that. So if you want to have more kind of informative discussions, you're welcome on the speaker board. But if you're going to spread conspiracy theories without any sort of evidence, then I'm not for that.
Okay.
All right. Omar, any other thoughts on macro fronts? We got cut off with the Trump news.
I think we're going to be fine, right? They call it the business cycle because it's a cycle. The economy goes up and then it goes down and then it goes down and it goes up and down and up and down and up and down. It's been like that for decades. So, this recession is probably not going to be as bad as 2008. And we survived that one too. So even if there is a recession, we have a ton of room for monetary stimulus. And we've really got an AI boom that is not a bubble, not a fad, is actually transformative for labor productivity and is going to change the world. Okay. So AI will solve all our problems. However bad it gets, cut the rates, AI, he'll probably be fine. So I'm not too worried. New information could maybe change that, but so far I'm sleeping soundly.
And Peluche?
So it's pretty funny to me that people panic for 4% unemployment when in 10, 15 years, 20% will be unemployed because of AI. So at the end of the day, we are going to end up with a lot of employment anyway. So it's the kind of funny panicking about it now.
Yeah, I'll take the other side of that, of what Omar just said. I think that we are heading into a recession in the next few months. I think a recession will start in the next few months. And primarily because I think the interest rates stayed too high for too long. The unemployment rate is accelerating upward. People are dismissing Fridays. A lot of people are dismissing right now, or market in general is dismissing Friday's report as a one-off, that it will come down a little bit. And if the next unemployment report also shows 4.3 or even moves higher, I think it's going to be a problem for market sentiment. On the other hand, if you look at inflation nowcast, this is on macro analyst account. If you look at inflation nowcast, it is projecting core PCE to increase year over year from July to August, from 2.7 to 2.8. And that, so the Fed is kind of between a rock and a hard place here. It's going to be curious. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the coming weeks. Luce.
So, since we are talking about macro, I wanted to say what will be, in my opinion, the biggest threat to US economy, but also globally speaking. So, in few years, like 2030, something like that, there is going to be a massive wave of baby boomers going to pensions, and that is going to be extremely hard on the government and tax front. They will either choose to tax the retired people income, or they can tax the income of the people, generally speaking. So that's going to be the biggest threat looking forward.
Okay. Thank you, Luce. Yeah, there's a long-term, Jeff Gunlock has been talking about this, so there's a long-term looming. The government spending, deficit spending as a percentage of GDP is very high right now. It is already at recessionary level. So on top of that, if you go into a recession and the government has to increase spending, there's some interesting times ahead. All right, we're going to end on that note. Thank you very much, everybody. And I will talk to you all tomorrow. Take care.